Hey guys, welcome back to Old Guy Talks Money. What do you think the one question we all ask ourselves when we're deciding if we're ready to retire? I don't know about y'all, but the one thing I'm probably worried about the most is whether I have enough money. Well, today we're going to break down the key steps to figure this out. We're going to explore how Social Security, pensions, possibly annuities fit into your retirement plan. We're going to discuss the 4% rule and its updates. We're going to talk about how that relates to the 25 years worth of living expenses. And at the end, I'm going to share some tools that you can use to simulate your retirement scenarios. So let's get started. So where do we start? Kind of a big topic. There's a whole lot to digest. But if you're going to figure out how much you need to retire, you need to estimate what your annual living expenses will be. You probably heard me say in a previous video, if you don't know where you're going, you're not going to get there. So what does this include? Well, it's going to include things like your housing, your health care, food, transportation, and of course, we want to have money to enjoy activities like travel and our hobbies. To give you frame of reference, as of the latest data, the average retired household in the U.S. spends about $4,000 a month, which works out to be about $48,000 a year. As I began to plan for retirement, I did a whole lot of research. The method that really resonated with me, the 25 years worth of living expense. Now, it's a popular rule and it's very simple. You take your estimated annual expenses and you multiply it by 25. This gives you a really good ballpark figure of how much you need in savings to cover that 25 years of retirement. So, we take that $48,000 that we talked about previously, you would need about $1.2 million saved up. Now, don't panic. That sounds like a really big number. I think y'all probably all seen the headlines that the number that everybody feels like you need to have saved going around is about 1.496 million. I think that's what it is. But don't panic because remember, you've got Social Security, you've got pensions, possibly annuities, you've got other things that will reduce that amount. So what do I mean by that? Well, I can't say it. Social Security can play a big role in your retirement planning. As of 24, the average monthly Social Security benefit for retirees is about $1,800, which totals $21,600 a year. So if you think about it, instead of needing $48,000 from your savings, you only need to recover the remaining $26,400 a year. Using the 25-year rule again, you'd only need about $660,000. Much, much less than $1.2 million, much less scary. As I mentioned, don't forget, Social Security is not the only source of income you might have in retirement. You could have pensions, you could have annuities, you could even have part-time work. It's kind of that barista fire thought process. Each of these can reduce the amount you need to withdraw from your savings, further stretching your retirement nest egg. Now let's talk about the 4% rule, another essential guideline in retirement planning, how it connects to the 25 years of living expenses. 4% rule was developed by financial planner William Bingen in the 1990s. He suggests that you can safely withdraw 4% of your retirement savings each year, adjusted for inflation, without running out of money over a 30-year retirement period. So how does this tie into the 25 years of living expense rule? Well, the 4% rule is actually a way of calculating the same idea. Multiply your annual expenses by 25, you get the amount you need to save to withdraw 4% of that total each year. For instance, 48,000 times 25 gives you 1.2 million. 4% withdrawal from 1.2 million is 48,000, the exact amount you need to cover your yearly expenses. Kind of the inverse of the same idea. Another way to say that is the 25 years of living expense rule is essentially a simplified version of the 4% rule, giving you a quick way to estimate how much you need to save. But it's important to note that the 4% rule has been updated over the years. Bingen later suggested under certain circumstances, like including small cap stocks in your portfolio, you might even withdraw closer to 4.5% to 5%. However, in today's economic climate, some experts recommend a more conservative approach, possibly lowering the withdrawal rate to 3.5% or 3.3%, especially if you're concerned about longevity or market volatility. Bingen suggests using guidelines, maybe an upper limit of 5% and a lower limit of 3%, and adjusting as market conditions change. What if you plan to retire early, say 60? And that's kind of my plan. Uh, haven't announced it on the channel yet, but I have talked to work and I will be leaving at the end of the year. So I'm going to have a period where I'm not receiving Social Security, and those are going to be my bridge years. During that time, I'm going to have to rely totally on my savings. So let's make an assumption. Let's say you start with $1 million in savings, and for that first 7 years, you would withdraw $48,000 annually, which gives you about a 4.8% withdrawal rate. But once Social Security kicks in at 67, your withdrawal rate drops significantly. This means you might be able to retire with less than $1 million if you're okay with that higher initial withdrawal rate during those bridge years. So, what do I mean by that? Well, if we had that 7 year bridge covered, so 48,000 times 7, $336,000. And then once you receive full retirement age at 67, start collecting the 21,600. That reduces the amount you need to withdraw to $26,400. Multiply that times the remaining 18 years, giving you a total of $475,200. It says conceivably it could be possible to fund a 25-year retirement, $48,000 in retirement expenses with $811,200. The caveat here, I didn't factor in inflation or market conditions. We didn't factor in any earnings on the portfolio. And we'll talk about how to run some scenarios in a minute. What I want you to see, though, is this exercise is really important because your number may not be as big, or it could be bigger than you think, depending on what you think is going to happen in the market. All right, guys, we are at a website called retirementsimulation.com. What this is going to do, then this Monte Carlo retirement calculator, is we're going to put in some data, and it's going to run about 5,000 scenarios and give us a percentage of chance of success on our portfolios as we've assumed it. So let's kind of use some of the data that we've been playing with here. So my current age is 60. We're going to say that my retirement age is 60. We're going to say, and this is from the $48,000 a year times 25 years, that we have 1.2 million saved. Okay. We're not putting any more money in. We're going to take out $48,000. I'm going to assume no stock market crash, but as you can see, you can assume any of these ranges, and if you click on it, I will show you. If you say 20%, then it will tell you what year. This is really important if you're concerned about that sequence of return risk, but I'm going to leave that like it is for now. Now, my portfolio is probably going to be something like this, with 60 in stocks, 35 in bonds, 5 in cash. I want to be real conservative here. So let's say my stocks are going to return about 5%. We're going to get about 3% on bonds. Cash, we're going to get, let's do 1%. And let's set inflation to 3%. Now, I know that we've had a period of hyperinflation. We know that this is closer to the historic average, so I'm going to use that. The other thing, I feel like I'm being really conservative right here because the stock market returns probably are closer to 10% potentially. 7% may even be safe, but this is a good starting point. So let's click calculate. All right, so it's going to show you the worst scenario, 10th, 20th, all the way up to 90th percentile. You can see there's only one scenario where this fails. Right here where I run out of money before 75. Every other scenario ends up with money more than we started with based on the where we started. Yeah. Okay. So down here, it will tell you that the percentage of scenarios that still have money at every age. So 93% of the scenarios still have money at 110. 95% at 100. Okay, so this is a good way to gut check it. Now, if you'll do some research, there's plenty other free ones out there. You can be much more granular than what this is. You can see if we click this up to 7, let's take the inflation rate up to 4. Let's say, I'm going to get crazy and let's take out $72,000 a year. All right, how does that change it? All right, so you can see I increase this number on the stock, but also increase the inflation. Well, we have one where I ran out at 91, one where we run out at 83, and again, that worst case scenario where you get really hit by sequence of return risk early on up in here, it goes way down. So this is one of those things that you can kind of play with. Now let's change this back to 3. Whoop. See if that changes. Okay. So again, it improved it a little bit. And then if we went up here and made this a little bit more conservative, and let's take it to a 60,000. Okay, and this kind of mirrors that first scenario. So guys, I hope this was helpful. I know it's one of those things we all worry about. I know I've thought about it a lot, and I've run calculations. I've played with the Monte Carlos. I've worked and fine-tuned on my budget, tried to build pad to try to get a number that I feel comfortable with. I've watched a lot of the YouTubers out there that are in retirement, and they went through the same thing. I think this was probably one of the main things they were worried about the most. And I would tell you that most of them have done just fine or very content. So I hope y'all have found this a little educational, a little entertaining. Please hit that like and subscribe. It will help me grow the channel, and I will see you guys in the future.